Mark Kinders. I was the Director of Public Affairs here at UWRF from 1985 through 2009. And all those years, I worked with Jen, and we had a fabulous office in public affairs. We were a small but mighty staff, including Jim Thies, who was our Sports Information Director and Assistant Director. Deb Hoffman, who was our office manager and was mom to all of our hundreds of students. And then Brenda Riedel, who is back there, who was our staff writer for many years. And when I first met Jens in 1985, I had spent 10 years previously in newspapers, and I worked with photographers. Sorry, Colleen Callahan, I know this doesn't mean you, but some of them were very difficult. You know, you have things like, we had who was actually National Press Photographer of the Year, and every day he would look at the next day's shooting schedule. And of course, they always wanted to do, you know, news and Pulitzer Prizes and things like that. And if it said they had to do an ad photo or they had to take a mug shot of the new chiropractor who just moved into town, the guy called in sick. You know, and so we would, you know, routinely have problems with that. And we'd have photographers who would get their newest and latest toy, like say a fisheye lens, and they would hand you a mug shot. Somebody looked like the photo came through a peephole, you know, in a motel room door. That was not Jens. Jens was just incredible. I was just amazed when I first had to work with him because of the fact that he absolutely loved what he did. I mean, he had to do all the routine photos, all the, you know, the gripping grins of check passings, and 400 photos every year of all of our student athletes. 70-some commencement ceremonies where if you're a faculty member or, you know, any kind of executive and you're sitting there on the podium, you got bored after a while. You would amuse yourself by reading the mortar boards or looking at the young women's shoes to figure out who's going to trip, you know, things like that. Well, Jen's quite the contrary. Every time he went to a photo assignment, he knew he was doing something special. He was creating an archival memory for the university that people 100 years from now will be marveling at. But also he was taking photographs of the people who were there that were extremely important to them. You know, he was in the moment with them continuously. And so he was just absolutely a joy to work with. You know, I mentioned the commencements. He used to have to do passport photos, shoot slides for classroom presentations, on and on with a variety of different assignments. But because of the fact that he was so good, he was always being borrowed by others. So, for example, the university played a role in creating the St. Croix Valley Regional Tourism Alliance. That was 19 chambers in 6 counties on both sides of the river. River Falls, Hudson, Stillwater, Hastings. One of our founding members was Kitty Rhodes, who at that time was the executive director of the Hudson Chamber, later state representative, Wisconsin Secretary of Agriculture. There was a lot of high-profile promotion that had to go on as a consequence of this, and the Alliance was always asking for Jens to come out and take photos. A couple of really good examples of this is when we had our incorporation signing ceremony. It was on the riverboat in the middle of the St. Croix River, and we had Governor Tommy Thompson and Governor Arnie Carlson, and Jen just waded in, got fabulous photos, you know, the two of them having a great time, and everybody else that are now part of the archives of the Alliance. So he brought all that on a regular continuing basis, the quality of the work that he did, but he was also an expert in Mac and Macintosh. We were one of the early enablers and users of that in public affairs back in 1989, 88. And Jens became an absolute real resource for people on campus, including faculty and staff who were trying to figure out how this technology worked. And he would write programs for us in public affairs that just really maximize our ability to do our job well. But as Rev Ted said, there's another side of this too, which is, I'm glad you said it, it's sneaky. I was going to say something nicer than that, but that fits. So one of the problems that we used to have with this is that my wife, Linda, is a graphic artist who used Mac. And so whenever she'd be coming to the office, she would get together with Jens in the back room at photography services, and several offices away I could hear the giggling and the laughing and everything else. And it's sort of like, you know, they're looking at whatever the latest doodad is that's coming out from, you know, from Apple. And I think they kind of rotated their strategy on who was talking about things first, whether it was going to be Jens or Linda, depending. And it was usually like, Linda, you know, I can save you 50% off on this new thing. It's only $500,000. You know, and then the next day, Jen's would be, oh, I hear Linda's getting this, you know, we could use it for the office too. So I finally put a rule into place with them, which was when my wife came into the office, she was forbidden to talk to Jens about Mac stuff. I couldn't make a stick with her, but I tried to get Jens to do it, but it didn't work. And if you look at the photos, you'll see another mischievous side of Jens as well too. As I said, you know, we had a small but mighty shop. We always had a lot of fun. We had some terrific interns, hundreds of students over the course of our careers. And our students were smart, but the longer they were with us, the sassier they got. Now, they used to take umbrage with us, and probably primarily me. But if you look at some of the photos, you see our students would show up and do things like, we'd have a commencement party for them, they'd be wearing tutus. Or, you know, I would get them all a congratulatory cigar, and they would want to have photos taken of them with those sorts of things. The sneaky part of Jens was he talked fellow students into more stuff than you could believe. He was, you know, he was just so subtle. Well, you gotta do this. And I used to get like postcards that would come into the students, and the backside would be like, you know, a blackmail note where little pieces were clipped out, words were clipped out of newspapers, glued on the back with cryptic messages. We had stuff like that coming in all the time. It was just absolutely a hoot. After Janice had several years of a portfolio of these kinds of photos of students, we got Jim and I together to talk about, well, what are we going to do about this? You know, we didn't include Deb because she was mom. And so we started talking about it and said, you know, we have really bright students here, and they're going to really excel at what they're doing, obviously because of our mentorship as well, too. And as they moved into better and better jobs, well, it's going to be worth a lot of money to suppress these photos. So my wife and I are in town for about 2 weeks, going to be tracking with the foundation because Jens and I think it was primarily Jens decided that we need the UW River Falls Foundation Lamborghini Fund for Public Affairs. So we're going to check to see how it goes. And Jordan, if the money's there, you get a third of the real time. The other area that Jens really excelled in as well too is we had the Kansas City Chiefs Summer Training Camp for 18 years, and Jens was a constant throughout that, taking literally thousands of photos, you know. And you want to talk about professionalism? He just used to wade into it, and he had celebrities like, you know, Joe Montana, Priest Holmes, Tony Gonzalez. Celebrities on the sidelines, Coach Dick Vermeil, John Madden, didn't bother him. He was out there shooting everybody, all the players, all the practices, and also coaching our students, mentoring our students on how to go about, you know, covering one of the best professional business franchises in the world. And I think one especially that I want to point out, there's a photo that's back in the lobby there, is in 2004 we had a visit from President Bush, who was in the middle of his campaign sweep through Minnesota and Wisconsin. And he was really good friends with Coach Dick Vermeil and also the Chiefs President General Manager, Carl Peterson, so he stopped by. Okay, to say that this was a big deal is an understatement. I have to say, in my context on this, I spent 4 years in the Marine Corps. Several of those years, I was assigned to the White House Presidential Security Detail at Air Force One for President Nixon. Security is tight. It's really scary. Well, President Bush got here. The FBI was wanting everybody as they came onto the field. There were no fans. We had 95 players, all of the 50-some administrative staff. They had only about 15 of us from the university. There was a gunship flying overhead above Raymond Field. And we knew there was a SWAT team that was hiding over the back of Dick's IGA in case they were needed as well, too. And the media were all shoved off to the side, about 50 or 60 of them. And despite the circumstances of what was going on there, Jim just tore into it. You know, and one of the pieces of equipment he had that he said he had to have was an auto drive on his camera. So in the space of about 30 minutes, he took about 750 photos. And then he went to the next list. And if you look at the photos back there, you'll see one of President George Bush, who was playing catch with the Chiefs starting quarterback, Trent Green. And Jim's got it almost to the point of it looked like video, 26 frames per second. You can see them throwing the ball back and forth. That photo is still used by the Chiefs and was used by so many others as well, as were many of his photos over the years. And it was just a remarkable thing because when it was all over with, Trent Green, the starting quarterback, said he was scared to death that he was going to drop the football when President Bush was throwing it to him. Jens would have got it, I have no doubt about it. So the final point that I wanted to make though too is, you know, as I said, Jens is very much a part of the Chiefs camp as well too. The Chiefs used to routinely ask him to take photos of all the players and activities going on in the field and other dignitaries and celebrities that came to town. And so I have a final thing to close it out here, and Jordan, this is going to be for you and yours. And this was from Bob Moore, who is the Kansas City Chiefs PR director for all the years that they were here, and is now the Chiefs historian. And he wrote, many members of the Chiefs who spent time at the team's, he's like a doctor, so team's training camp remembers photographer Gunelson, and we're sorry to hear news of his passing. There were many happy days for all of us, and Jens was a regular for many years that we spent in River Falls. To this day, we often find ourselves talking about camp once the summer comes around, and all the wonderful people we met there who were part of the university community. Jens was surely one, and his photos tell an important story to our history of the franchise. And I think that encapsulates very well the legacy that Jens will be leaving behind in so many different ways, whether it's for the university or the larger community of the Kansas City Chiefs. He was just absolutely a treasure, and he will always be in our hearts, our minds and our hearts. Thank you.